Hello, lovelies. Today we are going to be talking about my two favorite topics in the entire world in one video. We're going to be talking about makeup and psychology, and specifically about bias. So my goal for this video is to share with you guys some cognitive biases and then give you some examples from the beauty community. And the whole point of doing this is so you can kind of, understand what these biases are, what drives people to have them. The more you can be ahead of things like marketing tricks or phrasing from beauty gurus, you'll catch it and you'll understand that there's a bias going on there, and then you can think more deeply about the product or the application or what have you. Okay, let's just jump in. I want to start with choice supportive bias, which is also known as post-purchase rationalization. The second name has a little more meaning to us, and it is exactly what it claims to be. It is when you rationalize a purchase after you've made it. In other words, you bought something, so you want it to be good because you spent the money on it. You don't want it to be a bad product. The reason I want to start with this bias is that I think this is one of the most widespread kind of problems in the makeup community. This is how you end up seeing tons and tons of good reviews. Then you go buy a product and you might be like, wait a minute, I thought everybody loved this. Why is it not all that great? And something I've really noticed in the beauty community is that as the price goes up, so does this bias. Not to name any names or anything, but there are some palettes that exist that are in the $150 price range. That's a lot to spend on powders. Do you really think you want to hand over $150, 150 medium French fries, and say, oh yeah, this wasn't worth it? No, you want to tell yourself it's the best purchase that you've ever made. And another note on this one, probably a controversial note, there's a lot of concern about whether you can trust a person who receives PR, and I'm not sold on the fact that you can't and that you have to always watch people who purchased it for this exact reason. I think you have to look at things from a much larger perspective. You have to be able to watch a review or read a review and look for keys that might suggest they're actually just supporting their choice. So quite related to that, we have confirmation bias. This is when you've already bought a makeup product and now you don't want to hear any negative reviews. And in fact, if you stumble upon one, you might be inclined to leave a negative comment, hit the dislike button, because you really don't want to hear any person say, hey, so you wasted your $50, $60 buying this product. This one is actually one of the most widely committed biases in general. People do not like to hear differing opinions, and the reason is because nobody really likes hearing that they're wrong. And any way that a statement, whether it's directed to somebody personally or not, if it can be interpreted as stating that somebody is wrong, then they might take it personally and get offended. I personally came face to face with this the most when I put up a kind of negative review about Huda's palette, which, what are those, 65? I guess I was able to do that because I didn't have any qualms about returning it given the circumstances. But a lot of people were very upset with my opinion, to the point of critiquing me, critiquing the way that I look, things like that. Very extraneous variables, but all because they didn't want to hear somebody basically saying in different words, yeah, you blew $65. Then we have the bandwagon effect, and you probably can already kind of guess at what this one means. This is when suddenly everybody is saying, oh my gosh, this product is the best thing since sliced bread. You absolutely have to get it. It's phenomenal. I'm going to have to say that I really and truly have thought for a while that Kat Von D's tattoo liner is this. I'm sure it works for some people, but the reason I suspect this is because after all of the drama came out about Kat Von D and her anti-vax scandal, all of a sudden, all of these people who had loved Kat Von D's tattoo liner and swore by it, it was one of the top-rated eyeliners of all time, all of a sudden, everybody started saying, yeah, I never liked that. I need an alternative. I never even liked it. Why was I using it? Because of the bandwagon effect. Because everybody said it's the best eyeliner you'll ever come across. I've often suspected that this might even be the case with the dreaded Subculture palette. Again, I've never tried this palette. I've certainly talked a lot about it though. But it had such a negative reputation in the beginning, and it absolutely did seem like a bunch of people were jumping on this bandwagon to talk negatively about this product. Fast forward a year later, and a lot of people that I've met and talked to have said, you know, I actually really like that palette. I think it's actually a good palette, and I have no idea why people thought it was so bad. Well, it certainly could have been a lot of people just jumping on that bandwagon and saying, yep, it's a terrible product. Availability cascade. So this is when you repeat something enough until it becomes true, and my makeup community example here right now is Thrive Cosmetics. Where did this brand come from? Where did this brand come from? And you know, this is, I think more than anything else, this is the result of PR and sponsorship, where suddenly people that we all watch suddenly start talking about a product. And generally, all at once. It happens in a 1 to 2 week time span. And then all of a sudden, it's like we're just seeing it everywhere, and we think that everybody's using it, and we think we need to try the brand as well, or we're missing out. We're not talking about it because we just found out about it. It's a very interesting marketing approach by beauty brands in which they are kind of capitalizing on being afraid of missing out or being excluded from the group. Another example of this has to be Ace Beauty, which appeared during the summer and has kind of faded since, actually. But for a while, everybody was talking about that brand. Then we have anchoring, and this is where you hear one opinion and you latch onto it and you truly believe it, and you carry that thought with you. One way in which I've personally seen this is sometimes I'll put up a review of a product, and I'm always surprised by how many people in the comments kind of compare my review to a larger influencer. Well, you know, Toddy had the same experience as you, although things were a little different in this aspect. Or Jaclyn Hill rated this really highly. And you know, I think this is why during that whole Marlena versus James phase that we endured, a lot of the larger influencers were saying, no, our opinions are very, very valuable. I've got to admit, I agree because of what I've seen. People really do latch on to those initial first impressions and opinions and carry them with them. It's interesting, and you know, when you really look at these biases, it kind of makes you understand the brand influencer relationship a lot more, because there's a lot of biases going on here that you can capitalize on. And while we're talking about influencers, let's talk about the reciprocation bias. This is when you respond to a positive action with another positive action. So for example, if a brand treats an influencer very well, maybe takes them on lavish trips, is that influencer going to be more likely to, I don't know, give a positive review on their latest makeup? Most likely. Related to that, we have the self-serving bias. Now, I've actually got to share with you guys an unrelated to makeup study because it's so fascinating. So a team of researchers asked doctors whether they believe that when pharmaceutical companies give them gifts, it influences the prescriptions that they write for their patients. To give you an example of that, if, say, the huge pharmaceutical company of Pfizer sent these doctors, I don't know, a Roomba, would it influence their prescriptions? So 64% of those doctors said, you know what, that influences other doctors. And 86% of them said, that doesn't influence me. That is the self-serving bias. That is when you believe that other people are influenced by gifts or special treatment, but not you. I'm just always kind of baffled at how many people really and truly believe that they're above the influence of things like gifts. And, you know, man, if only we could live in a world where that's not how society worked, but it's how society works. And you have to recognize that there's a reason that brands do the things for influencers that they do. And it's not because they are just being nice. Come on. Okay, so kind of moving out of influencers, we'll talk about the ostrich bias next, although I've got to critique the psychology community on this one right here, because ostriches don't stick their heads in the sand. Ugh. So the whole idea behind this bias is that you're essentially sticking your head in the sand. You don't want to hear anything negative because you have formed your opinion, and you don't want to hear anything that contrasts it. This is actually a really dangerous bias. I remember my textbook having the example of smokers kind of, plugging their ears for any news broadcast ever that talks about cigarettes and how harmful they are. I would actually update that for 2018. I think that more people have become aware of the dangers of smoking. Now I think the best real-world example of this is texting while driving. Oh my gosh, I'm baffled by how many people do this, even though there's constantly accidents on the news all over the place about how many people get in accidents because they were texting. I digress. Still, if you take nothing else from this video, take that. Please don't text and drive. Seriously. But in terms of the makeup world, there's something that I see still going on that is an example of the ostrich bias, and that is how people view replicas of makeup. You know, we are so aware of the dangers of fake makeup products, and yet there are certain people who continue to stick their head in the sand, don't want to hear it, are going to keep buying these horrendously unsafe products that were made in somebody's attic. And on a lighter note, let's talk about functional fixedness. So this is when you believe that something is to be used in one specific way, and you throw away the idea of possibly using it any other way. A fantastic example of this is eyeshadow. It's a powder in a pan. You know what else it could be? Highlighter, bronzer. But we get so fixed on the idea of it only going on our eyes that we can't fathom the idea of a powder being multi-purpose. And yet we keep on buying all these different little powders, and we have them all over the place. And I bet you guys anything, you have some eyeshadows and highlighters that are the exact same, but you're using them differently. That's functional fixedness, and companies use it to sell us more and more products. Then we have the deprival superreaction tendency that I think all of us have been guilty of at some point. This is when you fear losses more than gains. Studies have found that losses are twice as powerful as gains, so the way that makeup companies capitalize on this is to sell us limited edition products. And we all love them. We all love the threat of a product that's gonna disappear if we don't get it. You could miss out. You could lose. I think it's really interesting if you kind of evaluate your own purchases and you think about the things that you've missed out on versus the things that you kind of wish you hadn't bought, you kind of didn't need or just don't love all that much. I bet you if you actually wrote it down, there are a lot more products that you just didn't need to buy than products that you truly regret not buying. But on a daily basis, when you look at your makeup collection, what do you think of first? You think of, oh, I missed the Mario palette. Versus thinking, why do I have these other 10 palettes? I don't need them. That's how powerful the fear of loss is. And again, telling us something is potentially going to be gone forever is a really good way to market. And then we have the blind spot bias. This is when you don't believe that you can be biased. Let me tell you right now, every last one of us is going to deal with this to some level. You know, it's really important to realize that this is just human nature to resist us actually having an imperfection. What? I'd actually say that it's probably an evolutionary trait that is meant to make us think we're the best human alive. We clearly have to reproduce. You will see this constantly. You are never going to find a review that is outright telling you it's dishonest. In fact, you're not even going to find a sponsored video that might have some dishonest features in it that's going to tell you it's dishonest. Every review you ever read is going to tell you it's honest, or watch, it's going to tell you it's honest. I think this is the hardest to deal with too, because again, like I said, this is saying, oh, maybe I'm not perfect. And that's a hard pill to swallow. And so what I would say in this situation is that the best thing you can do is to kind of, sit and think through what possible biases could I have that could be influencing me to think I'm unbiased. All right, guys, so there's a ton more biases out there, most of which I could still compare to the makeup community, but I think I'm gonna end it here for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please let me know if you did by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.